And I wanted to start out, we are now officially in fall. I don't know if you would agree with me. I know the calendar doesn't necessarily say that, but we went to a cross-country meet in Cambridge, and as we were going there, we noticed that some leaves were changing colors. Has anybody seen any leaves changing colors? Yeah, we're officially in fall. And for those of you who are on social media, I don't know if any of you follow a character by the name of Pittsburgh Dad. Anybody heard of Pittsburgh Dad? A couple of you have. He has a video that he puts out every year on September 1st, and if you've seen it, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But he looks down at the newspaper. The newspaper says September 1, and when he looks up, everything is turned into fall colors. You know, he has a scarf on. Everything is pumpkin spice. What is it? Spice pumpkin spice, whatever it is. Like all that stuff is going on. Like just like that, fall is here, right? You know, and that's sort of where we are. But I don't know about you. When I think about fall, something else that comes to mind is apple cider. Do I have any apple cider fans here? I mean, some of you are big time like apple cider people, I know. And I wanted to just use that apple to see if you may be familiar with a couple pieces of wisdom associated with apples. And I'm sure that you are, but we'll go ahead and we'll take a look at this. You could probably tell me that an apple a day. Okay, so you've heard that. How about this? One bad apple. Oh, one bad apple. So you have heard these expressions before. And this morning I wanted to ask you a question about those. I wanted to say, are those statements true? Are those statements true? Does an apple a day keep the doctor away? Does one bad apple spoil the bunch? And you know, maybe they're true to some extent. Are they true? Can they apply to other things? Because I came to the conclusion probably not, because this was the exercise I did. I said instead of an apple a day, I tried it with this. I tried a Reese cup a day. Does that keep the doctor away? No, I wish. I tried a Coca-Cola a day, and I'm going to tell you, I've done this one so well. I've had so many, does that keep the doctor away? And I don't know that that's necessarily true, but what if it wasn't one bad apple, but what if it was one bad choice? Can one bad choice spoil the bunch? And the topic, I think, and I've put this whole lesson together, and I still don't know exactly if this fits squarely. But the topic that at least we're going to potentially wrestle with this morning may be related to something that is popularly known as cancel culture. Anybody heard of cancel culture? Like it's a pretty big thing, right? You've probably, and I think we'll go beyond that. I think you'll see an application beyond that. But you've probably seen some stories, right? Stories of people being canceled for something that they said or something that they did, possibly when they weren't very mature, possibly when they were mature, but we've seen these stories, haven't we? And sometimes the actions that these people do are very egregious, right? They're very sensational, and they generally follow a rather normal pattern of somebody seems to be doing very well, then word comes out that this person has done something awful, and then there may be a court case, there may just be the court of public opinion, and everything turns. Right? When I was in college, there was this guy. His name was O.J. Simpson. Now, I want to go back. Does anybody I'm going to talk to those of you who are a little older than me. Does anybody remember when O.J. Simpson was loved and considered a great football player? Like a lot of you do, right? And then, I was trying to watch the NBA Finals, and everything changed. And people's opinion of OJ changed dramatically. But before that, here's a guy who had endorsements. He was the sideline reporter. He was in movies and commercials. Like he was really loved. And then all of a sudden, just like that, everything has changed. And he was canceled. And I thought, is this limited to popular culture? And I thought, no, I don't think that it is, because we know that there's people in church circles that make bad choices, right? We've seen the stories, or we've heard the tales of the falls from grace, right? And maybe some come to mind just when I share that phrase with you. Someone's out there seemingly doing good work for the church, and then some story or a series of stories come out, and opinion turns, and it turns quite rapidly. And today what I want to do is I want to try to prepare and equip us to how do we make sense of this? How do you navigate this? Because when these things happen, people become cautious, right? And sometimes people will become confused, and you may even come across people then who will become skeptical, right? There's this series of things that can happen, right? You might be able to tell a story of, I heard a message from some, popular preacher you see on the internet, and but somebody has heard something bad about that person, so you really shouldn't listen to that person. Is it maybe that this only happens to me? There's some people where it's like, oh, maybe there's something there. Maybe this person's theology isn't quite sound, and we have to learn how to navigate through that. If you've been with me for any length of time, you've probably heard me use a phrase that goes something like this: Christians don't need enemies when they have friends. And I use that statement because Christians are quick to find things that divide us. You don't want to hang out with the Baptists or the Methodists or fill in the blank, whatever, the Catholics, because, they obviously have some erroneous belief or idea. Right, that's something that people become quick to separate. When this idea was first given to me, I lost my eraser. It was I was attending a what was it called? Worldview Academy. I was attending a Worldview Academy seminar, and he and the speaker asked the room, he said, how many of you are pre-trib and how many of you are post-trib? And I'll be honest with you, I don't really know what that is. Does anybody have a good definition of what pre-trib and post-trib are? Bob, you've got that? You want to help us out here?
Pre-trib is Christ is coming before the tribulation. Post-trib is Christ is coming after.
Pre-trib, post-trib. All right? These are different types of beliefs that Christians have, right? And what it is that, and make sure I put this the right way, what I found is that there's this idea of the rapture where all the believers are taken back up, and there is this idea of Christ's return. And in pre-trib, these things are happening together. You have rapture plus Christ's return. Is this right, Bob?
Yeah, and I should go one way to say it is, in the pre-trib, Christians will not go through the tribulation. In post-trib, Christians will go through the tribulation. It's the same thing. I'm saying the same thing, but yeah, you're right.
So these in the post-trib, there's going to be a rapture, and then some period of time, and then Christ's return. And I'm going to tell you, Christians can be very sensitive about this. Now, I don't get into this because the best words I have, and these aren't good words. I don't care. Like please don't take this the wrong way. I don't have the capacity, and I think, well, God's in control of all of it, and it's not worth me getting worked up, and it's not worth me fighting with somebody about. That's that.
I'm just going to give one. I know what I am.
Okay.
But I'd like to put it out there as pan trip.
Okay.
It'll all pan out.
There you go.
Pan out.
There you go.
Regardless of what you are.
Yeah. Whatever it is. If your heart's right, you're going to be in the right spot. Right? But people get worked up about. You got something, Tim?
Just be ready.
Just be ready. That's the best. That's the best lesson to take. We can argue and whatever through all this stuff, and it's be ready, right? That's what it comes down to. But you'll see people that get really territorial about this. You see people, and what was interesting to me was that both of these points of view come from the same place. You know where they come from? They'll read the same scripture and they'll come up with two different things, right? So how does that happen? How does that happen? How does it happen that people can read this, that they can become so opinionated in a particular way, that they become feisty about it, and if somebody else has a different perspective on it, they'll leave the church for it? How does that happen? Now, I need to tell you this story because I have written... The word rapture came up, and I cannot tell you the last time I heard, prior to last Monday, I couldn't tell you the last time I heard the word rapture. But the end of last week, Jim Patterson calls me. Jim's my neighbor. I think so highly of Brother Jim. He says, hey, would you be willing to take the missus and I down to the airport on Monday? I said, I would love to. I would love to. As we're going down, Jim shares with me. He says, I don't know, Jess, I think it's getting pretty bad. I think the rapture is going to happen any day now. And I said, I completely understand where you're coming from. I can see that point of view. I hadn't thought about the rapture probably in at least months, if not years. It's not something that I dwell on. But whenever I got home that night, I decided I was going to grill steaks for dinner. Now, my mom and dad have this souped-up grill. They said, whenever you need to grill steaks, grill it on our grill. I said, okay. So I'm over there. I'm grilling steaks. I put them on, and then I see that the back door to my parents' house is open. So I put my head in the back door, and I said, hello? And nobody answered. And I thought, this is weird. Like, why would, if the back door's open, that means my mom's around, like there's got to be something. So I walked around to the front of the house. You know what I found when I got to the front of the house? The cars are in the driveway. The front door is open, just the screen door. So I put my head up to the screen and I went, hey! Now, for those of you that don't live in McCullougville, you need to understand that the way we generally greet each other is with a hey, right? That's how we talk to. It's not hello, it's hey. That's how we talk to one another. But I've gone around to, I've now addressed two different floors in the household, and I'm not getting any response. And you know what comes to my mind? The rapture must have happened.
You're left.
And I'm like, oh my goodness. I grab my phone. I send a text to Trace, and I should have had this ready to go.
It said, "You still there?"
Yeah, I send her this text. I send her this text. It says, "Are you still there?" And whenever you send a text, now I don't know if it's just an Apple thing or I don't know how this works, but it goes and it shows delivered, right? The message goes, and underneath the message it says delivered. And usually whenever I send a text to Trace, it'll say delivered and then read. Like she's on top of that. It just says delivered. And I was like, oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. And so I go back to the grill and I flip the steaks. I mean, there's no reason to ruin the steak, And I think to myself, oh my goodness. Then the next thing, Trace is calling me. Now, just say, if the rapture happens, I can get that my mom and dad and Trace all go before me. I get it. I get it. I have so many flaws, right? But I was like, oh my goodness. But then Trace calls me back, and I'm thinking, well, maybe it didn't happen. And then a minute or two later, my dad comes around back on the Gator. He was over at the barn doing some different things, and it was just that was me dealing with the rapture here in this in the last week. And I'm glad that you laugh about it, because I'm going to tell you, in the moment, wasn't funny at all, right? But back to this lesson, right? There's all sorts of people who get worked up about different topics, pre-trib, post-trib. There's people that get worked up about prosperity gospel. There's people who are so concerned and so sensitive that they run or they avoid certain people. They say, if somebody said this, like, just stay away from all of it. And this morning I'm going to throw a monkey wrench at you. And this is the monkey wrench. I'm going to ask you a couple of questions. Have you ever learned something valuable from someone who is not a follower of Jesus? Anybody? Have you ever received something valuable from someone who is not a follower of Jesus? And I put on the example I put on here is a doctor, right? Sometimes we've have doctors that come from completely different cultures, right? And I was like, And I don't know about you, but I'm going to tell you that I have learned an awful lot from atheists. Pastor John mentioned here a couple of weeks ago, he mentioned a video that he shared. This was shortly after he came here, but he had a sermon, and during the sermon he shared a video of Penn Jillette, the magician from Penn and Teller, who is, he is a very vocal atheist. And you know what? If you took the time and you listened to him, you know what? You could be convicted. You could be challenged. You could grow in your faith if you were willing to do that. I would tell you that I have learned a great deal from Jewish rabbis, people who don't take Jesus to be the Messiah. I've learned a lot about Jesus. It's interesting that as I hear them teach, I'm like, how can you not see Jesus? But they don't, and we could probably make quite a list. But this is probably more of a question for the men. But have you ever learned something from someone with radically different perspectives than you? Every man should be raising their hand, because your wives have radically different perspectives, and you have absolutely learned something from them. I know. Right? That's Steve. Like, come on. I thought for sure. So with that overly long introduction, I want to focus on one verse today, and that verse is 2 Corinthians 10:5. So if you want to turn in your Bible with me to 2 Corinthians 10:5. The Apostle Paul writes, "We demolish arguments and every pretension that sets itself up against the knowledge of God, and we take captive every thought to make it obedient to Christ." And that's where I want to focus today. Captive and obedient. Captive and obedient. What if, when we encounter people with radically different perspectives, we were to seek to understand their perspective, take it captive, and make it obedient to Christ? What if we were to do that? What could that do? What relationships could be formed? What relationships could be restored? What bridges could be built? How could that play a role in the expansion of God's kingdom? How could this further connect us to God our Creator? Yet, how easily we dismiss any thought from someone who is different than us, someone who has a different political or denominational opinion. And I'll just tell stories on myself. As soon as I heard that someone was a Mormon or a Jehovah's Witness, I immediately discounted everything that they said. I didn't take that as a way that it could be sharpening, as iron sharpens iron, right? I did not take that. I pulled back. I would retreat. I would say, don't go there, don't do that. And what I found is that I was becoming smaller. And I think the challenge that God gives us is that we are to get bigger. Now, this isn't necessarily an easy lesson, but I see this all too often. I see, don't go to this movie. Don't get on social media. And what it is I see Christians retreat. I see us surrender ground to the enemy. And I want to challenge you this morning that I don't know that that's what God wants us to do. Does that make anybody else besides me uncomfortable? Yeah. I mean, blink if you're uncomfortable now. Okay. All right. That's where we are. I've lost my point here. Or lost my place. What if someone was one thought away from getting it right? What if someone was one thought away? What if there was some grand combination and they have a lot of the numbers, but they're one number off? You know what happens? The lock remains shut. But if you can help somebody with that last number, things could become unlocked. Right? Now, what if God could use you or me to help somebody figure out that combination? What would that be like? What would that be like? What if you or I, and probably more so me, are a couple numbers short in our combinations? What if we're off just one number and we haven't quite figured that out? One bad apple may spoil the bunch, but people are not apples. People are not apples. People can be transformed from rotten to fresh by the gospel of Jesus. How many of us were rotten? Yeah. I think. And they may just be one thought away. And I want to just remind you today that everybody you come in contact with, we do this thing. Everybody we come in contact with is worth it. Remember, Jesus valued, this is the class participation part. I expected that to be a little more engaging. Remember, Jesus valued, there we go. All right, you're with me. People are worth it. Lost people are worth it, right? Even if their last thought or choice was bad, they're still worth it. And they may be one thought away. But to do this, however, we need to be able to take those thoughts captive, and we need to make them obedient to Christ. Now, I have a fancy word for you today, and I don't know that it's really a churchy word, although I would suggest that you're more likely to hear this word in church than anywhere else. But the word is discern. How often do you use the word discern? Some of you that have been here the last couple of weeks, you'd say I use the word discern more than I use the word dogma, right? You know, I get it, right? Discern. Now, I want to give you my definition. This is my definition. This isn't Webster's or anything like this. But my definition of discern is it's the ability to tell the difference between something that is right and something that is almost right. Like there's a world of difference between being right and being almost right. And so it's been a while since I taught this lesson, or this little point. But when it comes down to it, there is one way to heaven, right? That's the way to heaven. How many ways are there not to heaven? Now we know that there is this direction, right? Where does that get us? It gets us to not heaven. What about this direction? Where does this get us to? Not heaven. What about this direction? Where does it get us to? No. What about that direction? Where does that get us?
Not heaven.
Gets us to not heaven. And so as we, and we've all gone through this, as we mature and as we become upper room disciples, like we're challenged with things. We encounter things that we thought, I didn't know that I was going to have to deal with this. Like life becomes real and like you have to pretend to be an adult. Thanks, Josh. Like I appreciate somebody else admits to pretending to be an adult. Like there's times I was like, how did I get, like what am I dealing with this for? I thought life was supposed to be easier than this. It was like real. And you have to say, where are we going? How do you take that thought captive and make it obedient to Christ? So I have 7 points, and we're going to spell out discern with the 7 points on captive and obedient. So let's get into it. Number 1 is define the thought. First step is to define the thought. 2 Corinthians 13:5 reads, examine yourselves to see whether you are in faith. Test yourselves. And what I want to encourage you to do is when you encounter these different thoughts, I want you to be able to clearly identify the thoughts. And this is the cheat on how you do it. You write it down. When you write down the thought, it becomes more clear. And you're going to say, okay, this is the thought. What is it? Where did it come from? And I'm going to tell you, you talk with certain people. When you talk with non-believers, you're going to come across some interesting thoughts. There's some people out there that have a hard time with God. And you say, why do you have such a hard time with God? And you know what they're going to say? They're going to have some answer. And maybe it'll be a hard answer like this. I don't understand God because kids get cancer. Has anybody heard that one before? That's a tough one. What do? You retreat? Do you surrender that ground? Do you give up on that person? Or do we have to take that thought captive and make it obedient? As an aside, does anybody want to look at that thought? Do we need to wrestle with some hard thoughts like this? Maybe we do. Maybe we do. To somebody whose life experience has involved a kid having cancer, that can be a major barrier in their relationship with God in just one thought. But we need to be able to write it down. We need to be able to define it. That's number 1. The second one, investigate the source. Where did it come from? 1 John chapter 4, verses 1 through 3. John writes, dear friends, do not believe every spirit, but test the spirits to see whether they are from God, because many false prophets have gone out into the world. This is how you can recognize the Spirit of God. Every spirit that acknowledges Jesus Christ has come in the flesh is from God. But every spirit that does not acknowledge Jesus is not from God. This is the spirit of the Antichrist, which you have heard is coming, and even now is already in the world. One of the things we have to do is when we find these thoughts, we have to figure out, where did they come from? Is it rooted in worldly wisdom? Is it rooted in media influence? Is it somebody who comes from a different belief system? It's been a while, but I need to get an eraser on both sides. I'm always looking for an eraser here. It's been a while since I've drawn them, but some of you will remember me drawing my stick man, right? You've got your stick man, right? We've talked about this before. We've talked about how important it is what happens between our ears. But the thing is where do things come from? There's sometimes they come, and I'm going to draw a little antenna here. I have five antennae because we have 5 senses, right? There's some things that come to us through our senses. There's some things that come to us from the outside in. And there's also some things that happen from the inside out. Have you ever had an interesting idea that you have no idea where it came from? Like, sometimes, this is going to get me in so much trouble. Sometimes, maybe if I tell it the right way, I won't be in as much trouble. Trace says, I love getting flowers, all right? And it's her birthday or something, and I think, I'll order her flowers. Now, how can that happen? It can happen because I see an advertisement somewhere. It can happen because I'm walking through the grocery store and I see they got a bucket of flowers, and I can say, that's an outside thing, right? Sometimes they'll actually, like if you order flowers online, they'll ask you for important dates in your life, and if you're smart or dumb enough to actually enter those dates, they'll send you reminder emails to say, hey, usually it says something like, fool, make sure you get your wife flowers for her birthday. For those of us that have out of control inboxes, that becomes very challenging. But sometimes there's some external stimulus. There's something that comes from the outside in. A commercial on TV, radio, you see it, you hear it. You walk outside, you smell flowers, right? They're like that's how it is. But you could also, wake up in the middle of the night and say, "Oh my goodness, I should get my wife flowers for her birthday." Where does that idea come from? That's an inside out. I didn't have anything else saying. Sometimes, and that little cloud thing is supposed to be an idea, right? Sometimes they come, but you got to take it captive, and you got to make it obedient, right? Sometimes God will say, you know what? Maybe God's given all sorts of these things to me, and I've missed it, and so He's like wakes me up in the middle of the night and says, "Hey, make sure you do this." Right? We need to understand where the source is, but they can be internal, they can be external. Now, the internal ones, I would say, for those of you that remember the old Bugs Bunny cartoons, like there's Bugs Bunny or whoever, and the angel appears on one shoulder and the devil appears on the other. Right? We need to understand that there's evil spirits that can give us stuff too. They can come at us. So, I'm looking here at my notes. Movies and the internet are not always great sources of thoughts and ideas. And then I noted that I was watching Mission Impossible last night. Has anybody watched the Mission Impossible where, the bomb's going to go off in 60 seconds and you have 18 minutes of film that covers that last, it's like incredible. So we got to be aware of the source. Mission Impossible is not always the best source for some of those things. So that's the S, is identify or investigate the source. S, seek Scripture. Psalm 119, verse 105 reads, "Your word is a lamp for my feet and a light for my path." When we find these things, we need to look for the Scripture, right? We need to search for relevant Scripture that can help us understand and align the thought with God's Word. Right? We've the first two steps we're taking it captive, and now we're going to start to make it obedient to Christ. Right? We're going to look at it through the Word. C is consult with the Holy Spirit. John 16, verses 13 and 14, Jesus says, "But when He, the Spirit of truth, comes, He will guide you into all the truth. He will not speak on His own. He will only speak what He hears, and He will tell you what is yet to come. He will glorify Me, because it is from Me that He will receive what He will make known to you." And so I would suggest to you this consult with the Holy Spirit. This is praying. Right? This is praying to the Holy Spirit that He may give you perspectives and insights to help you understand the situation that you find yourself in. I just make a comment here. The way this is probably overly simplistic, but seeking the Scripture, I look at the Bible as very good for general direction. And I look at the Holy Spirit as very good for specific direction. That's just the simple way that I look at that. Where are we up to? We're up to E. Evaluate the impact. All right, we're taking it captive, we're making it obedient. One of the things that we need to do is we need to see what's the impact that this is going to have. Matthew 7:16 reads, "By their fruit you will recognize them. Do people pick grapes from thorn bushes or figs from thistles?" Right? We need to assess whether or not the thought leads to good fruit. Does it give a positive spiritual, emotional, or relational outcome? Right? We talked, was it last week, about cause and effect, right? If it comes from God, it's intended to build up, right? The intent is that we're going to build up the relationship with others. 1 Peter 3:9 reads, "Do not repay evil with evil or insult with insult. On the contrary, repay evil with blessing, because to this you were called, so that you may inherit a blessing." Does this propagate good, or does this propagate bad? Does the response to this, is that how we do? The R, it is refine or reject. Refine or reject. 1 Thessalonians 5:21 and 22, Paul tells us to test all things. Not some things, test all things. Hold fast what is good, abstain from every form of evil. So as we look at this, we need to say, is this good? Is this going to get us a good result? We may say we need to go a little bit further. We may not have enough information, right? Because if it's refine, we come back up, right? If it's reject, we know we know how we can dismiss it. I lost my place here. I had one of my mentors, he used the expression, and it just sort of sticks with me. He said, when you find something, you want to eat the meat and throw away the bones. Like, get rid of the stuff that doesn't serve. You hold on to what's good and get rid of what's bad. That's, part of the challenge there. And then the N in discern is what's the new action? What's the new action? James 1:22 reads, "Do not merely listen to the word and so deceive yourself." 4 very important words. Do what it says. Do what it says. So after we've gone through this idea, gone through this process of taking captive a thought and making it obedient, we need to do what we're supposed to do. It's not do it and forget about it. It's not learn it and forget about it. It's learn it and do it. Learn it and do it. So now, it was my intent today to equip you with this framework. So I hope you find some value in that. But it's one thing to have a framework. It's another thing to use it. Right? So I have a little bit of homework here for you. And I want to challenge you to think about perhaps a thought that you may have dismissed a little too quickly, or somebody who you may have discounted for whatever reason because of a thought or idea that they have. And I want you to consider putting it through this discernment filter, through this framework. I would encourage you to not be, as we grow and as we mature, we do not need to be afraid of different perspectives. That as we wrestle with them, we will find that they will bring us closer to God as we go through that. Let me share just a story to wrap things up here today. I'm getting short on time, but it's been a few years ago. I think it was about the time we were coming out of the COVID lockdowns, and we were coming back to service on Sundays, but we were not having Bible classes on Sunday morning. We were having the Bible classes different days of the week. I no longer had a Sunday school, I had a Monday school, and I would come down here on Monday evenings and teach my little class. But it was about that time that I had an issue with somebody in the church. And who the issue was with is not as important. We had differing thoughts. This person thought one thing, and I thought that idea can be so much better, as I typically do in my arrogance. I asked to meet and was ignored. And I felt like I was ignored for some time. And I quickly found myself to the point where I did not want to come here on Sunday morning. I did not. At the time, I was the live stream moderator. And I thought, you know what, I can moderate the live stream chat just as easily from home as I can from, I would moderate back in the Sunday school supply closet. As I went through this, I just knew I was right. I knew I was right. Have you ever been there? Have you ever known you were right? Yeah. I love you, Steve. I do. Oh, no, I love you. Have you ever known that you're right about something and like somebody else is just, it's almost like they're trying to not get it? Have you ever been there? That's where I was. I knew I was right, and I knew I was right. I was right for days. I was so right. But the more I simmered on it, all of a sudden it clicked. And the Holy Spirit challenged me. And he said, do you really think this person that you are seemingly in conflict with gets up every morning thinking, how can I make Jess miserable? And I thought, no, that's probably not the first thing that comes across this person's mind. They probably don't think that at all, right? So why am I assuming that this person is trying to be antagonistic and to aggravate me? Oh, maybe I need to rethink something. Why would I assume the worst about someone? And the challenge came, what if instead you should help this person? Well, that's not where I really was intending to set out to be right. That was where I started. That was not where I ended up. And by taking the time and going through and making a thought obedient to Christ, things changed. Things changed. It changed my whole perspective. Now, I still thought my idea was really, really good. But the thing is that my idea was more about me and less about God. There was a lot of selfishness in my idea. And I didn't, if I knew that at first, I certainly didn't want to see it. But I saw that the more that I took it captive and the more I made it obedient. I was very, very selfish. But taking the idea, taking it captive and making it obedient to Christ, it revealed a much better way forward. Now, I don't know where you find yourself this morning, but I will suggest to you that over the course of the next several weeks, over the next several months, or the next several years, you will find yourself coming in contact with people who have different thoughts, have different opinions, have different perspectives. And I want to remind you, God took the time to make each one of those people. He wasn't having a bad day when he made those folks. He wasn't necessarily having a good day when he made you. Keep that in mind too. It's not like he made you on a good day and somebody else on a bad day. But what I want to encourage you to do is to look for the opportunity to connect with people, to be willing to tangle with the challenges that they have that keep them separated from God, that keep them in bondage to sin. Let me encourage you to take those thoughts captive and to make them obedient to Christ, that some lives could be won and that God's kingdom would expand. And what a wonderful thing that would be. So with that, I'm going to put 3 letters on the board. ACT. Based on what we've looked at this morning, what action will you take? What change will you make? And is there something that you learned this morning that you can teach to somebody else for your benefit and for theirs? Owen, you want to hit the button, please?